timing of when you close, scheduling movers, all of those things are so important. And a great example of that is this. So we had some folks moving from out of town and they were selling a property. When they sold their property, they thought they had everything lined up, and the lender they were working with, they missed a material detail and it delayed closing like 2 days. Well, it just so happened this particular mover was booked solid. They didn't have capacity to do anything. And so they closed, but then all their stuff, it was just sitting in storage, and they literally had to live out of an Airbnb for like 2 weeks before they could. So my point is, just make sure everything's buttoned up. Make sure you're working with a lender and that is paying attention to the details, because that matters, especially when you're moving from out of state. I mean, we've seen folks living out of a camper for a few weeks, Airbnb, staying with friends, relatives, and all that can be a really fun adventure until you add enough time. You put enough time behind it and it becomes a nightmare. Like, no one wants to live out of a camper long term. Nobody wants to live out of an Airbnb. You can have some fun with it, make the most of it, staying with some friends for a few days, but it turns into weeks or a month. Yeah, I'm sure you know somebody just like me that knows someone who's gone through something like that. So if you're moving from out of state, paying attention to the details, making sure things are scheduled properly, working with the right team to advise you and make you aware of some of the things to look out for. And the next thing I want to talk about is why waiting costs more. And it's a pretty simple concept when you consider just buying a $500,000 home. And at today's interest rates in the mid sixes, if you refinanced, if you bought right now and then you refinanced, whenever interest rates, maybe 2 years from now, rates will be low enough to where it'll make sense. Maybe 6 months, maybe 6 weeks. Nobody really knows. By the way, just a quick side note, if somebody's telling you interest rates are going to drop, they don't know. Nobody does. If anybody knew, they wouldn't be talking about it on TV. They would have so much business, they wouldn't have time to talk to anybody. Okay, so my point is, if you buy now, that home's going to appreciate. With average appreciation in a couple of years, you're going to be paying $25,000 to $45,000 more for that $500,000 home is now going to cost you $540,000, $550,000. Maybe not quite that much, but you get the idea. And then if rates drop, in the meantime, that house, it's going to appreciate more than how much homes are appreciating for right now. If rates drop to 6 or a little below 6 and stay there, we will have another land rush on properties. I can promise you that. Nobody knows when or if that is actually going to happen, but if it does, you will be thinking, oh wow, I really wish I would have bought when I saw Sean's video, because he was right. Okay. Now, with all that said, the hidden costs, it's layered with a couple of things. One, it can be that you didn't know about the unimproved taxes just being taxed on the land, and then you get hit with that surprise, that wonderful surprise a year later, 18 months later, 24 months later, and you got the tax bomb sitting in front of you. What I see people picking neighborhoods because it's the trendy neighborhood versus picking it based on daily lifestyle, where they're going to commute, where the kids are going to go to school. And there's some areas where you don't get to pick your utilities. And so that's an important thing too. For the most part, a lot of areas in Texas, you got the freedom to choose who your electricity provider is. Some areas you can choose who your natural gas provider will be. But those are some things to look for. And in the summertime, be prepared for that. Something else to pay attention to as well, Texas utilities for energy, for electricity. I like any kind of naturally supplied energy. The windmill farms and all that sound great on paper, but when you start looking at the details of those plans, sometimes they're not as cracked up as they appear to be. So Actually, we've been on a month-to-month plan with Reliant. There was only a couple of months, about 3 years ago, where we got hit pretty hard with electric costs, but on average, I'm not locked into any specific time frame, and it's it fluctuates a little bit month to month. But in the summertime, we've got a almost 4,000 square foot home, and our utility costs, I think the highest outside of that one spike summer, the highest is like 425, 450 for maybe 2 months. And then it's back down below 300 most of the time. But paying attention to the utilities, that's another hidden cost that I would advise understanding what all needs to get turned on. That was another mistake when the house with the school district issue, that was another mistake I made. I didn't know we had natural gas. So paying attention to the utilities. And then the last thing on hidden costs would be insurance, not just for your home, but your cars. The home insurance and car insurance in Texas, the rates have gone up, plain and simple. A lot of my colleagues in the industry don't like to talk about the negative side of buying properties in Texas, but this is definitely a negative side. It's an expense. The upside to living here, though, outweighs all the negatives. It just does, period. The economy, the ease of access to everything, entertainment, airport, like you've got like 3 different major airports that you can pick from. Entertainment out the wazoo. Like there's live concerts, live music, local cover bands, local tribute bands. I don't know that you'll find a better scene for entertainment than North Texas, where it's this easy to get to and there's always something going on. We have crazy hot summers sometimes. We have crazy cold crazy cold winters sometimes. But really, at the end of the day, the convenience, the lifestyle, the freedom that we have in Texas in comparison to some of the other areas where you get taxed a lot for this and regulated for that. If you're an entrepreneur, Texas is the place to be. Like you just look at some of the industry leaders who have moved their headquarters here. Texas favors entrepreneurship. So if you own a business and you have the ability to set up shop in Texas, I would encourage you to do that. There are some great tax incentives for that. One thing I will just say in closing is I've lived here for almost 50 years and Fort Worth is an amazing city. You're going to love it. You just will. The culture, the food's amazing. Like Tex-Mex is the best Mexican food. I'm sorry. I will die on that hill. It is absolutely the best. And from Joe T. Garcia's to Esparza's in Grapevine, Mi Cocina and South Lake, like all these places, like those are my favorites, absolute favorites. But I appreciate you guys spending time with me.